Right. Okay. So today I'm going to do a install video, alright, of this. So I decided to go get the Direction Plus Preline filter kit. So it's the Direction Plus Preline Plus pre-filter kit. So a little bit to get around there, but this has the water watch system in it. I looked at a lot of different systems on which one I was going to go. Was it going to go the fuel manager system? Was it going to go this system? Was it going to go just a water watch system? Because you can get the water watch systems. But I settled with this. So partly the reason why I changed my catch can was because I was going to fit this one, and yeah. So if you have a 200 series Landcruiser, you can follow this video along, and that's probably all backwards. But the part number is PL615DPK, the kit for the 200 series. This mounts underneath the original fuel bowl, has a bracket that runs across, and the filter itself sits just in conjunction where the intercooler sits. It runs down the side of the passenger side of the car there. So don't worry about that. I'm going to talk you through this, maybe do a little bit of a time-lapse thing, see how it goes. I am going to do another video of what comes in the box, because not a lot of people do that. So without further ado, let's get this thing installed. And yeah, these are the basic tools you're going to need. You may need a couple of things here and there. So you're going to need a 17mm 3/8 socket. That is for the 2 bolts here. You're also going to need a ring open end spanner, or you can just do it with 2 spanners, but to tighten them up, you're going to need a 3/8 drive ratchet with a couple of extensions to give you a bit of variety. You're going to need a 7/8 ring open end spanner, and that is for these fuel lines, and probably a shifter as well, because you need to screw these into that and then into the filter housing itself. I'll have to also check whatever they are to remove the plugs and re-orientate those. You're going to need a rag, you know, just keep your hands clean or whatever throughout the job. A pair of side cutters, bullnose pliers, potentially a 10mm socket that can be 3/8 or quarter drive, depending on what you're doing. This is a quarter drive 7mm socket on the little screwdriver handle, and that is for the hose clamps. You can actually use a flat blade screwdriver. I tend to use these. I didn't so much in the mechanics, but I've recently started using them a little bit more. Prevents over tightening of those, and you can also put them on the back of a quarter drive ratchet, or use the adapter, put it on a 3/8, whatever. So that's basically what you're going to need. You may need either another 10mm or potentially a 12. I think it's a 12mm for the 2 existing filter housing bolts on the car, on the Cruiser, because they run 12mm, I'm fairly sure. So to unbolt that bracket, so add another 12mm 3/8 drive socket in there. So the first sort of problem I've struck is I was reading through the instructions, and what I do is I lay everything out. I did this when I was in the mechanics. I lay everything out so it's nice, simple, easy to get to, and sometimes I just screw the nuts and stuff like that and bolts into the end of the item that it's got to be used for, so it's just quick and easy when installing it. But what the instructions say, right, is they give you 4 flat washers and 2 spring washers. What they say is to put a washer under every bolt and nut, right, for the big bracket. But when you come to the support bar across, they also say put a flat washer and a spring washer, which they don't in this kit. I can't seem to find them. They don't actually give you the flat washer. So what I did, if you run into this issue, and it does become a thing, is these are the ones I actually just had them sitting in my workshop area, and these seem to be working pretty good. They seem to be the right size, and they're gonna do the job. So just found some stainless steel ones, and away we go. It just depends on what you want to do, if you want to follow that instructions to a T, but you can just install them like that. You probably won't have an issue at all, or you can put the flat washer on, but I'll go to see when I actually go to install this via the instructions, but I find that this is going to be easier to do now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to install the barbs. So you would need to remove this blanking block off plug. You need to move it to this side, and you want both the barb fittings coming out this way. How these go in is you'll notice that one is tapered and one is flat. The flat goes into the actual housing itself, and the tapered screws into here. No washer goes in here. The washer goes behind here. Now you also notice that this washer as well, it's really hard to show on video, but one side of it is flat and the other side of it has like a rounded edge to it, right? So the rounded edge goes to the fitting side. The flat goes to the filter, the actual housing itself, because the filter housing is flat. This is more convexed. Be done up tight, but not super tight. Don't over tighten them and break them. They are like a alloy sort of fitting. So then you get the filter the right way around, and then you screw this in. Make sure all surfaces are clean, which they mostly are. So if you look on here, if you're actually uncertain on which is in and which is out, if you look on the top of the filter housing here, you'll see that has an arrow or a casting that is in, and this is the out. So the little arrow marks out. So if you're uncertain and you do get a filter housing and you're like, oh, how does this work? Because I know they have changed these used to have a primer pump on top of them, and they've swapped them around to the bolt style. So we screw this in. Pretty straightforward. If you do have a vise, now would be the time to sort of use it, but what I am going to do is get this blanking plate out of the way. Ensure no dirt or anything gets in here either. It will be caught by your secondary filter, but again, you don't want the dirt and stuff. Ensure that the washer is still on there, and just tighten this up. Make sure they're tight. The problem is diesel can leak out of these, but again, it's a fine line because it is a cast housing, and you do not want to strip or break it. Again, with this, tighten it down. I'll do this off camera. I find it's easier doing this stuff out of the car, most likely in a vise, which I don't have at the moment. Haven't got it all mounted up and stuff, so it's just easier to install it all now off the car, and you're not dealing with the bracketry, because the bracketry isn't designed to be pried on and really wrenched on, because you can break the bracketry. It's not strong, it's just designed to hold a filter in place, and that is about it. Flat side, convex side, screw that. Again, check that that's clean, nice clean surface. They're both installed. That's what it should look like. Hear this sort of ring rattling around, that's just where the hose needs to push up firmly into there. So let's cap that off, and let's go to getting this installed into the car. Like I said, you don't have to do this exact way that I'm doing it. I do it this way because it is theoretically easier. Doing this out of the car, you're not twisting and conforming the brackets, because they're not really held in there super strong. So first you want to start off by undoing these two bolts here. They are very hard to actually get in and get footage of, but these two here. So we undo those, remove this bracket, and then bolt the Preline Plus bracket to it. So once that's off, grab your Preline Plus bracket, line that up on the holes. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to be a little bit cheeky. I'm going to see if I can actually get away with this. And I can. They tell you to just cable tie the wiring loom to the bracket. I wasn't going to do that. So that looks a little bit tacky in my opinion. So this is what I always used to do with even customers' cars. If there was a more professional and neater way of doing it, I normally try and do it that way if I can. And Toyota put the bracket there for a reason, to hold the wiring loom, so I am going to put that bracket back. Now, you just want to just lightly tighten these up. They don't have them tight. You still want to be able to maneuver this around. So there's a bit of play and movement in there, but you don't want them that loose that it just falls around and flops around. Alright, you want to grab your Preline Plus filter, and we're going to be mounting this in here. So you're going to put your bolts in from the back. And the reason why I'm going to have the bolts coming through this way is if they do loosen up, they're not going to just fall. So I'm going to have them that way, and it would be super easy to put them that way. If you get a little bit of protrusion of the thread though, you can hit on your intercooler, but I'm going to have them that way. That way if these bolts do, or the nuts do come off, if the bolt does back out, it's just going to hit here and stop. It's not going to completely come off. Yeah, the filter can fall, but you're not going to lose all the bolts. So that's the way I'm going to do it, especially on corrugations and stuff. Now the thing you have to watch out for is down here you have the aircon pipe. So re-jigging this bracket so that we don't have any interference there with the sensor. I'm not gonna lie, it is a very tight fit. This is where you get your 17mm spanner. This is so awkward for me because I'm trying not to get in the way of the camera. 17mm spanner and your 3/8 drive with the extension. Again, don't do it up super tight, just do it until it's just beginning to touch, like that, and back it off just a touch. So we've got more than enough movement and play there, so if we need to do little tweaks here and there. So many people just tighten these right up and then they realize that, hey, this doesn't fit, this isn't working, and then they get frustrated. Easiest way is just lightly tighten up. Come to think of it, I don't think these bolts would come out. These nylock nuts are actually quite firm. So we've got a bit of movement there. We've got this. Might be a bit of an issue, but we'll soon find out. Moving on, we want to undo this. You want to get your bracket and you tighten these down. I'm just doing them finger tight, so I've got, again, enough play. Now it comes to the bar and whether or not you want to run the flat washer as well as the spring washer. I'm on the fence. I'm probably gonna run the flat washer. I'm gonna see with the flat washer first. It may not have enough thread with the bolts because you've got to account for the bracket, actual brackets themselves. And I got a little bit of thread there, so we'll see. The other thing I did think about is putting potentially
some Loctite on these, but I think they should be alright. Now there's going to be no way of easily doing this, but if you get the bolt in behind the bracket and then just spin the pole until it starts to pull up firm. The other one, just tighten the bolt. Here, again, the same thing. This is where we've got to do some little bit of re-jigging, a little bit of rearranging, get everything sitting where it's meant to be, and clearing this aircon pipe that runs down the bottom there. One thing I didn't tell you to grab is probably get a 13mm. If you've got a ratchet spanner, that'd be perfect for this pole, but a normal spanner will do as well. I'm cheating. I've actually grabbed a 10mm for down the back here for the bracket, and I've also grabbed my 13mm. These are out of my home kit, not the mechanics kit. This just makes it so much easier to tighten this up. Again, I'm not doing this super tight. I've got to reposition and find exactly where I want this before I tighten it right off. This is just going to be a little bit of playing around, and this could be different for your car depending on where the brackets are sitting, if brackets have moved over time. Pretty much what you're doing is making sure there's clearance everywhere and it's not rubbing on anything. Ratchet spanner setup down the back here, because it's so much easier to get that in there. Make sure they're tight. And I clip this wiring loom back on. And also what I'm doing is I'm just bending this bracket down slightly for the wiring loom. And the reason for that is to just give it enough clearance. It's not going to affect it in any way, but just give it enough clearance around the back of the filter here. I'm going to tighten these down, pull it across. So as I'm doing that, I'm going to pull that across just to give me a little bit more clearance on the intercooler here. Again, with that bracket underneath, I should be able to just tighten these straight down without having the issue of the thread popping up. This is where you do your full tighten down as well. Again, don't go crazy with it, you don't want to snap the little studs off. So that's on there, that's nice and tight. Now, the annoying part about this is you're going to have to tighten both bolts at the same time. Because if you go to tighten this one, it's going to spin this way, and it wants to loosen that bolt off. So you're going to have to tighten both in opposite directions and tighten them at the same time. See, aren't you guys lucky that you have me doing this sort of stuff? So all the trials and tribulations that I go through while installing it, you can have it nutted out in your head exactly how it's going to go, and it will not go that way. Now just do these up firm, like don't go too crazy with them either. You don't want to strip the threads. So it's got enough clearance under here. I might try and bring you with me if I can. So the way I'm looking at this is you've got an aircon pipe here, right, that runs from the firewall across. I'm running my hand underneath to just check the clearance between this sensor, because when this gets tightened, it's going to pull the filter housing across here a little bit, like a fraction. It's pretty much against the bracket anyway. So if I want to angle it like that, I get enough clearance. And you also want to be able to get to this tap is the other thing too, is if you have water in your fuel, you want to be able to get under here, crack that and undo it. You don't want to be like stuffing around trying to get your hand in there. So what I'm going to do is angle that down just slightly. Seeing how you can angle that down? I still have more than enough clearance under here for the two fittings, but it makes it easier for me to get my hand in there and drain this. If worse comes to worse, I will just unbolt this filter, lift it up, drain it, and then bolt it back in if I have to. But doing it this way, I get the clearance from the aircon aircon pipe, and I can also easily get to that to plug the wiring loom on. You can do that before you even start if you want to, but I didn't. Trying to get the footage for you guys as well as do this. Sometimes people say to me, you just stand there and talk, you don't actually show you doing it. Well, this is why, because it's difficult getting in here and filming it all. So that is that done. Next, what you want to do is you want to get this fuel line off. So use your pliers, undo this fuel line, and you want to route this fuel line to there. Now, they tell you to pull it off the, what was it? They tell you to pull it off the steel hose that is down here from the tank. I don't know if I'm going to do that. I want to try and keep the original length of this hose, because these hoses are ridiculously expensive. I had to replace this one because the previous owner bloody put a hole in it with pliers getting it off, and it sucked air in. So yeah, I don't really want to do that. Now this is where your rag will probably come in handy. This is going to spray a little bit of diesel, I would imagine anyway. Yep. It's a boy. Alright, so now I'm going to reroute this somehow. So let's have a look at this. See the way I can reroute this. Okay, so that was a little bit of stuffing around. Obviously I didn't film it all, but you may see it on the time lapse and stuff that I'm doing. But so what I did was I re-jigged this bracket, rotated a little bit, but it was more this fuel hose. All right, so it runs down, and you can see it down there. It's hard, the camera's not really focusing on it. See it down there? It's that one just there. What I did was I undid that clamp and I rotated it clockwise a fraction. Now your car may not have to have that issue, but, and then I ran it up. Now it comes up this way anyway, but around underneath the aircon hose, and then up and into the filter. And then when you push this all the way on, make sure it's right in underneath these little cups. Right? And that is actually how I found the way around cutting this hose. Like I said, you could cut the hose, trim it up. If you cut it too short, you're stuffed. You're gonna have to run another hose. But ultimately, I don't want to cut my existing stuff. I want the hoses to be fine. And I knew that this was gonna become a little bit of trial and tribulation for me, trying to figure this, how I was gonna do it. I do have a little bit of touching on this wiring loom here, but I don't think I can cable tie these my two fuel hoses together, and it will actually pull that away from the wiring loom anyway. And I don't really think that that's going to be a massive issue. Like, it'll have to rub for years and years before it gets through the conduit or through this hose. So yes, and that's all done now. So all I have to do is measure up my hose from there to there, which I'm about to do, and cut it. Use a razor blade or side cutters, whatever you want to do, and then mount that up, and then I'll prime the system up. I'll start the car, make sure the car runs, and then I'll get into doing the water watch side of it. You can lube this up with diesel if you want, but I'm just gonna go in dry and just see if I can just force this on without having to do that. No, I'm gonna have to give it a bit of a lube up. This actually takes some real effort. It's around, okay, I'm gonna give myself a touch extra. I'm gonna have a little bit extra deliberately.
While you're
So I could lie to you guys and do YouTube trickery and stuff like that, but I'm going to be actually honest with you. If you do it the exact way that I've done it, you may have a lot of issues with rejigging the fuel lines. Now, this isn't anything to do with the kit. This is me not wanting to cut my fuel line back. So I've had to rejig this even when I've gone to install this. Now, I was looking at this hose and I wasn't entirely happy with the way that sat, because it's like got a decent bend in it, if you know what I mean. Like, so I've been rejigging it to take that real harsh sort of kink out of it, because I don't want to have a fuel restriction or anything along those lines. And then this one I've just been working to get around that. So I have clearance under that bracket. If you decide to do exactly what the instructions say, you won't have this issue, because this one will run exactly how it's meant to, up under here, go on there, and then you can get your nice sweeping bend. See, I don't want this kinking over. I don't think it will. I actually don't think it will, and I am going to roll with it this way. But yeah, that's what I've been tinkering around with. Otherwise this would have been done ages ago. But I'm pretty OCD when it comes to things, and I like things to be right. And yes, so it has to be done the way I like it. Now, when it comes to priming of the filter, you can undo this. I'm actually tightening at the moment because I want it tight, and just prime through here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to do the traditional way of prime, and just let it draw it through itself. So it may actually get air stuck up here, because that is the highest point. So we shall find out, and we'll see how it goes. Hopefully it just draws it through. It actually says on the instructions, just prime the stock filter until the primer goes hard. So if that's the case, which it has, it's gone hard. And let's see if this is going to just fire up and run with no diesel leaks. I knew that was going to happen. Okay, so this primer's now gone hard again. So obviously you can bleed it up that way. I'm just choosing to do it different. See how it goes. Let's go for round 2. There we are. I don't think you have too much of an issue with the hoses rubbing here, because there's not too many vibrations and these hoses aren't moving around that much. So we've got no leaks under here. Fuel filter seems to be fine. Get my rag out of there. I will wash all this off. No diesel leaks under there. I'll look down there and there's no diesel leak. So now time to wire up the water watt system. So I'm just giving you a glimpse of what I'm dealing with under here. The grommet is all the way up there. I don't know if you can actually see it, but it's in up here. See up there? right, can't even get my finger in the way, there, that bulge in the center, and then you have this wire come through here. Now you can't just rip the wire through because you don't want to damage the multi-plug. You also don't want to damage any of your wiring under here. Like, this is a nice fuse panel to probably tap into as well for your little buzzer, and then run everything across. Now if you have a Sahara or VX or anything, you're going to have a covering panel under here, and so you're going to have to take that off to get to it. But yeah, this is what I'm dealing with. If you're wondering how I'm pulling the wires through the firewall, I'll just tape a bit of, this is like fencing wire, to the wire and then pull it through. Now I'm going to tell you guys a few things because this is actually the next day. I decided to pull the pin on it last night because there's a few things I had to do, and I'm just like, I've got other things I got to do, so I'm going to pull the pin on it. But anyway, with this plug here, this rectangle plug, what I advise you do, remember the orientation of the pins, and pull the pins out the back of the plug. Then fold this wire back on itself, so it's going through with the heat shrink, and then pull this entire cable through that way, because you are not going to get it through with the rectangle plug on it. It's just not going to happen. I tried every which way because I didn't want to dismantle the plug, and I was stuffing around for 45 minutes trying to do it. So trust me, it's not that hard to pull the pins out the back of this. Just remember, like I said, remember the orientation. So if you want to have a look at the orientation of it, there you go. Just remember the orientation, because you're just not going to get that. Not in a Toyota grommet situation. You're just not going to get through the firewall. This is the other thing, right? I'll show you right now. I don't even know if you're going to be able to see. You're not going to be able to, but I might go with the flash. But what I've done is, on my cruiser, behind this panel here is a vacant spot for a bolt, and then it's the frame of the dash pretty much. So I've done the earth off that bolt, and then the power wire, I'm running power from outside the car. So I'm going to run power from this fuse box, and I'm running in through the car that way, and that's what I'm going to do. So I was originally going to pull power from the fuse box under the dash, but the piggyback fusing system that they use, you can't put the cover back on. But other than that, the system's pretty good. There's no diesel leaking that I can see. I did have this clamp here. My spring clamp was worn out, so I changed that out because that was slightly weeping after a decent test drive. Okay, so the install is complete. I hid the little unit in behind the dash here. I've just got to tidy up that power cable, so I got to just heat shrink or tape it up and then just tuck it away. All the wiring's nice and neat. Here is the water tap little light to put in there. I just put in the little blanking spot there. It's right here, it's visible, I can see it. When you turn the ignition on, now the fuse that I went for it's under the bonnet, it's an ignition fuse, so it's a little 10 amp ignition fuse. That's what I went for, but I'll let you listen to it when you turn the ignition on, and the light flashes. So it just does a little confirmation, like it sounds like pretty much like a cricket every time you turn the ignition on. So things to look out for are the multi-plug. Definitely pull the wires out the back of that multi-plug to feed it through. I can understand why they've done the whole pre-done the wiring loom and everything for you, but they should just leave those plugs off and then tell you, hey, put this wire in here, that wire in there, with that wire in there, because it makes it so much easier to feed through the firewall, because it was a real bad pain to get through. Second thing is, if you can't draw power from inside, see, I could have easily gone to the fuse box under my dash and I could have drawn the power from there, but I couldn't put the cover back on my fuse panel under there, so I wasn't going to do that. So you pretty much piggyback off a fuse. So make sure everything, the wiring, everything's all rated for that power that's going to be pulled from there. So I've done that. That's all done. The fuel line, like I said, you can trim yours back and do it exactly how they want. I chose not to do that. I wanted to keep my fuel lines intact for multiple reasons. If I do want to change the system down the track, I can easily revert it back to OEM. If I have to pull this system out, if there's a fault with it, I can revert back to OEM, and I haven't got shortened fuel lines and stuff. So I tend to do it that way. That's just me personally. Therefore, I ran into a few dramas with trying to reroute those fuel lines because I've got a fuel line with extra length on it. So other than that, it seems to be a really good system so far. Obviously, I took the car for a drive, I degreased it, checked for fuel leaks multiple times. I checked for fuel leaks originally, had none. Took it for about a 15-20 minute drive. As I came back, there was a slight fuel leak there. So obviously check multiple times for fuel leaks, maybe after a decent drive and things along those lines. Priming up the system, straightforward. I just primed it off the original primer. I didn't even crack that little bolt on top. I just primed it and away it went. My thoughts on the Preline Plus system so far, the wiring aspect of it isn't too hard. That's pretty straightforward, but the problem is feeding it through the firewall. Depending on the vehicle, obviously that will change. My 200, I don't have a lot of room. Like it's really tight under the dash, and I knew that was going to be an issue for me. But other than that, it seems to be fine. So yeah, do I recommend getting one of these systems? Face value, yes, I do, because like you spend what, 400 to 600 bucks and you save potentially $8,000 for injectors. So it's definitely worth its weight in gold. Yeah, I'll just see how it goes. I started my car the next day because I've heard of people having drain back issues and things along those lines. I know this video is going to be a bit longer, but yeah, so I started up, mine just fired up straight away. So mine doesn't have the drain back issue or anything along those lines. So I know some people have issues with the Landcruisers having like drain back issues just with the standard fuel setup. So I don't know. But yes, all good. I'll let you know how it goes down the track after a couple months' time. If there's no issues, it's probably going to be the same. It's a filter. You don't know it's doing anything. It's just in the background, working in the background as insurance. The way the water check system's all finished off in the car, I really like that. It's a nice, neat finish. Like I said, you don't have to run that light. I run the light for extra insurance. Now, the light you don't get a big wiring loom with. So the power loom and the wiring loom for the light, you don't get big looms. So I've just got enough to reach from where my little blanking plate is across to where the unit is. So you got to try and figure out where you're going to pull the power from and where you're going to put that light, because it's going to be, you're going to have to put the unit almost dead smack in the middle of that because there isn't a lot of room. Yeah, ideally they probably want you to pull it through the driver's side, but yeah. Anyway, this video is going on for ages. I hope you guys get some use out of this and it helps you install this on a 200 or any other car that you're trying to install it on. It's basically the same sort of fundamentals, but you've just got different mounting points and different ways to run it into the car and stuff. Yes, anyway, all good. Take care, guys. Till next time. Peace.